All right, Captain America the Winter Soldier. This is probably going to sound like a crazy overstatement, but I do mean this sincerely in the heart of my hearts when I say that this is the best film in the entire MCU. Yes, I think it's better than Avengers. I think it's better than Captain America Civil War. I think it's better than Infinity War. I think it's better than all these other movies. I truly believe that Captain America the Winter Soldier is the best film in the entire MCU. And it's not because it's the most crowd pleasing or fan servicey or any of that. The other films do that way better and for good reason. But this is the first film that felt the most grounded, the most realistic, the most relatable, the most genuine, the most sincere. I mean, this was the first film that felt like The Dark Knight. The way The Dark Knight was a film where it took the idea of Batman, but it had added a lot of realism. It made it very grounded in a reality that felt like our own, that felt relatable. And The Winter Soldier was that. So, what's the story? This is a very interesting story, but basically, we follow Captain America. This is post Avengers, and we follow his life. We see what his life is like, and the emotional and psychological problems that come from being someone who grew up during World War II and is now having to learn to live in the modern world. Along the way, he meets his these other great supporting characters like Anthony Mackie as Sam Wilson, aka the Falcon. We see Scarlett Johansson as Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow. We see Samuel L. Jackson back as Nick Fury, and then we have all these other incredible actors. We get Robert Redford. I mean, the original Bush Cassidy and the Sundance Kid himself, and he's in this movie, and I mean, considering how big of an actor he is, considering the films he's done, he's perfect for a movie like Captain America. And we also have all these other new interesting characters. We have the Winter Soldier. We have the main villain of the story. We have Alexander Pierce. And well, that's Robert Redford's character is Alexander Pierce. But we have this other interesting character, what's his name? Crossbones, played by Frank Grillo, who's another interesting character. But essentially, to cap it all off, cap. Yeah, I know it's a stupid joke. But essentially, to cap this all off, the story basically revolves around Captain America learning to live in the modern world, and he discovers there's this new plot, this new threat, and it comes from a very unexpected place. It really messes with everything you believed and everything you thought about in the MCU, and it does that in a very creative way. So obviously we're going to talk about spoilers. This movie has been out for 5 years already. If you haven't seen it, then what's wrong with you? Go see this movie right now, God damn it. If you don't want to see any other MCU movies, fine. You're not into the MCU, fine. But watch this movie. This movie is so grounded and realistic and sincere and adds some gravitas to it that you don't need to be a comic book fan to enjoy it. It's a great action movie. It's a great spy thriller kind of movie. And it works. It works. This movie is perfect because it takes a character like Captain America, who could have easily been who could have easily been portrayed as a cliche, boring, Wonder Bread, like, oh, he's not a conflicted character. I mean, he is the kind of character, he's like Superman. He's a tough character to make a movie out of because he doesn't go through any character arcs that okay, well, he actually does go through a character arc, but he doesn't go through any sort of arcs that stem from him having some sort of negative flaw about him. He's always been the good guy from the get-go. He's always been the hero. He's always had the right more sense of morals and who he is. That's something that's never changed. But in order to write a character like that who's always been good from the get-go, it's not about the best way to write a character like that is not about changing the character, but changing the world around that character. We see Captain America. We've seen him in Captain America: The First Avenger, and how, he is who he is. He's that character who wants to fight in World War II. He wants to serve his country. He wants to do all this because it's what he believes in. But then you see Captain America in the modern world, and you see how it conflicts with who he is, with what he believes in. He joins S.H.I.E.L.D. and does all these recon missions, but they don't give him the same fulfillment that fighting in World War II to serve his country did. And so he feels lost. He's in this modern world and he doesn't know what he really wants to do with his life. He doesn't really know where he fits in or who he really is now, because he doesn't know. And I appreciate this film for going in such a psychologically relatable and realistic route, because that's something a lot of us can relate to. It's hard to figure out who we are and what we want out of life. Or when you move to a new area where you don't know anyone and you have to learn to figure out how you can fit into a place that you feel like you don't fit in, or you feel like you don't belong here. And this movie does a good job of showcasing that. You have moments where there's this beautiful scene where he's talking with Sam Wilson at a Veterans Administration office, and Sam Wilson just responds by saying, "You can be anything you want to be. So what do you want to do?" And then Captain America just kind of shrugs and smiles and just says, like, "I don't know." And it's so relatable, because you see him, keeping a smiling face because he's that positive, upbeat hero, but you see his heart feeling empty and broken because he doesn't know where he fits in anymore. And I love this movie for going to such a realistic psychological place like that, and for being so grounded. They took a character like Captain America and made him feel so grounded, so relatable, so heroic at the same time, and it works. I mean, the action scenes are always going to be spot on and great, especially in this film, and we'll get to that later. But some of the best things in this movie are just the moments when characters are talking to each other. The opening of this movie is Captain America meeting Sam Wilson for the first time, and they're just sharing war stories. They're just standing out in a nice park, and it's just a beautiful day, and they're just talking to each other about what it was like to be in the war, and they relate to each other because of it. And then I love this scene. There's this beautiful scene where where Captain America tells him, like, "Oh, the internet, it's great. I've been using that to catch up on a lot." And then Sam Wilson just responds by saying, "Marvin Gaye 1972 album, everything you need to know about the 70s." And then Captain America's response is, I'll add it to the list." And then you see him pull up his list, and you see all the pop culture references from the past 50 years that he's catching up on, from like Star Wars to Beatles, and it's great. It's hilarious. I love it. It's very realistic. Like, of course Captain America would do that. Of course he would take out a list and write notes and things to catch up on and read about and learn, and it's such a realistic thing in that way. And there's another great scene where Captain America and Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow, played by Scarlett Johansson, they're just sitting in a car, and they just stole a car to get away from S.H.I.E.L.D., and which we'll get to why later. But they stole a car, and they're just sitting in the car, and they're talking, and they're just having a conversation, and they're just talking about dating, and about having a friend, and about what it means to have a life in the modern times. Captain America's motto and belief is to always be truthful, to be sincere, to be who you are. And Black Widow, I mean, she is the ultimate spy. She's the liar. She's someone who will deceive. She's someone who will... And it's interesting to see that contrast where they both acknowledge, but it's a very adult and realistic conversation because they both acknowledge the other's viewpoint. Captain America slowly realizes that life isn't always black and white. It's gray. It's not always as simple as good versus evil. Captain America isn't a bad... Black Widow isn't a bad person because she lies all the time. It's part of who she is. There's the benefit in that. Just like how Captain America isn't always morally righteous just for uh, doing good, because it may not be enough to just do good in the modern world. And it's not always as simple as that, because you never know if doing good is the right thing to do or if there are bigger consequences in the future. So the movie, I applaud this movie for taking it to such a realistic place like that, for really making a film that could have easily been a black and white cliche summer blockbuster, but took it in a very realistic gray area. And to expand upon the theme of gray morality in this film, the movie showcases Shield. We see a lot more of Shield. We see Shield headquarters. We see Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, and he plays a great big part in this movie, and he's great in it. But spoiler alert: this movie's been out for 5 years. If you haven't seen it, then just stop this review and go see this movie right now, because it is phenomenal. But spoiler alert: it turns out Shield was controlled by Hydra the entire time, and it was controlled by Hydra in a very subtle way through different conspiracies. And it's very interesting because it showcases that, Steve worked for Shield. He was part of Shield for a long time, and it turns out that Shield was not right that Shield was controlled by Hydra this whole time. And it really showcases how unexpectedly gray the world can be. How you may it shows the importance of challenging one's convictions, because that is the one thing with Captain America that he realizes in the modern world is the importance of challenging your convictions. It's to not always see the world in a black and white way, because it's not always black and white. It is very gray, and the movie dwells on that a lot in this in this way, by showing this twist that Shield was used to be something that we always saw as the good guy when we saw them Avengers, and then it turns out Shield was the enemy all along. And Samuel L. Jackson was still the good guy this whole time, but he nearly got assassinated in the film, and you see that, and this movie really emphasizes a lot of that. A lot about secrets and conspiracy theories and all that, and sort of the importance of bringing the truth to the world and not just running away from it, or not just hiding it forever. That the world needs to know the truth. And the movie does a beautiful job of creating this tapestry of a plot that blends Captain America's convictions and a sense of morality with the theme of the story. There's so many. I'm just trying to think what else is there in this movie that really showcases that. But I think the best thing to do would be to just watch the movie, because I'd just be telling you the entire movie right here, plot by plot, scene by scene, when the truth is it's better enjoyed when you see the plots and themes of this movie formulate on its own, and you see this mystery slowly coming into fruition, and it's beautiful. And to go back to the action, I think this is some of the MCU's best action ever. Because the biggest thing with Captain America is he's not like Iron Man or Hulk or Thor, where they all have these otherworldly powers, or like these cool cannons on their hands. So the fight sequences are going to be more CGI. They're going to be more sense of blasting things and being super strong so they can break stuff. Captain America is a soldier. He's a fighter. So his fighting style will be more martial arts based. So they really embrace that. And the fight choreography in this film is incredible. These are some of the best fight sequences ever. And it's pretty brutal. We forget Captain America isn't like Batman, where Batman has a no-kill philosophy. But Captain America is a soldier. So he will kill if need be. And you see some pretty intense moments. Like you see a scene where Captain America is on a recon mission for Shield in the beginning of the movie, and in order to take a guy out, he's like covering the guy's mouth and then like choking him out. You see a scene where he throws a knife and it hits a guy's arm, and you see him screaming, and then you see Captain America kicking his face so he stops screaming. You see some brutal action, but man, I think the best fight sequence in the entire movie is the highway fight sequence. The highway fight sequence between Captain America and the Winter Soldier is some of the best martial arts fight choreography in the entire MCU. It is on the same level as Ip Man. It's on the same level as The Raid. It's on the same level as all these other classic martial arts films. These fight sequences are just phenomenal. And the way they use Captain America's shield is so creative. Because it's a shield. It's not like a sword or like a blaster or anything like that. It's a shield. But the way they use that shield in a very offensive nature instead of just defensive it's creative. And that's why I applaud these movies. Why I love these MCU films is they know how to be so creative and so different. And this movie does a beautiful job of blending the like everything is just on point for this movie. The action is on point. The emotion is on point. I mean, there's so many beautiful emotional moments that people can resonate with. I mean, there's a scene where you see Captain America walking around a museum dedicated to World War II and what he did with his unit. And it's, you see that, I mean, the score that goes along with that scene is so nostalgic and beautiful, and you feel it. You feel Captain America's yearning for the past because it's all he knows. It's what he misses, and it's the only place he feels like he belongs. And you see that in his emotion. You see that in his face. But you see how even in such a sad, depressing moment, you see how he still tries to keep that smile on his face, still tries to keep that positive, upbeat attitude. But it's not obnoxious. It's not cliche. It's very sincere. Like he's trying to see the good in a bad situation and holds on to that good. And it's something that is admirable. It's something that we should all aspire to. You know, Iron Man is the character who we all wish we could be, who we all want to be. But Captain America is the character who we all should be. He's the character who we should all aspire to be because he's the character in this entire MCU who we can really relate to. Because at the end of the day, he's just a guy, just like us, who's been given some big privileges and gifts. But at the end of the day, he's still a guy with problems just like us. I mean, it's pretty funny, but there's a great scene where so he goes back to his apartment. He rides his motorcycle, goes back, he goes upstairs, he goes back to his apartment, and in the apartment hallway, he sees his neighbor, who's just a cute girl, who, I mean, long story short, she's played by Emily Van Camp, and she ends up being a secret SHIELD agent this whole time. But he asks her out for coffee, and she didn't, and she rejected him. Not in like an insulting way, but in a respectful way, she rejected him. And then Captain America's response is just, I'll keep my distance. And it's relatable. Even Captain America gets turned down by chicks. Like, it happens. And it's very relatable in that way because he's a very relatable character. His emotional, psychological problems are something that can be we all can resonate with on some level. It's obviously not going to be to that extreme, but we can all relate to that realization that our previously held convictions could be wrong. They need to be challenged. They're not what we thought they were all the time. It's relatable when you have to move to a new environment, whether it be moving for a new job or going to a new school or having to leave to go live in another country. And when you live in a new environment, you're trying to learn how to fit in. You're trying to learn where you belong. While at the same time, you're just yearning for the past. You're yearning for that moment in your life where you felt like where life was simple because you knew who you were. You were surrounded by people who you knew you were, and you felt like you knew where you wanted to go with your life. And you knew what you wanted out of life. And this movie really shows how they took a character like Captain America, who has a very simple morality, but they really made him, I mean, the best way to explain this is the fact that, yeah, to write a character like Captain America is hard because his character doesn't really go through an arc. He doesn't have any flaws to where he really has to overcome some flaws to discover a bigger realization about him. From the get-go, he's always been the good guy. He's always been the Wonder Boy Captain America who has a very strong sense of morality and knows who he is and what he wants. But you can ask any great screenwriter, the best way to write a character who doesn't really go through a character arc is to not to change the character, but to change his environment, and that environment challenges the character's beliefs or convictions. And that's what this movie does. It embraces the fact that Captain America is in a modern world now, and it addresses some very relatable things that are psychologically relatable. It could have been so easy for them to turn this into an Iron Man 3. And I don't hate Iron Man 3. I like that movie. It has its place in the MCU. It's a fun time. But they could have easily turned this into another comedy. Oh, look, Captain America. He's learning how to use an iPhone. And don't get me wrong, there's funny moments in this film. There's a great moment where Captain America and Black Widow are hiding from Shield because Shield's after them. And so they're out at an Apple store in a mall. And they have to use a device as part of the plot of the story. They have to use a computer. And they have a great interaction with one of the Apple employees. It's very funny, and it's very realistic comedy. It's not like some movie cliche comedy. It's just ironic. They're running from the law, and they're the Avengers, and they're going undercover at an Apple store, and they see an Apple employee, and it's very funny, and it's very realistic, and it works because of that. Because the directors of this film were Anthony and Joe Russo's, and if you know them, you know they're the same directors who went on to do Captain America Civil War, and then Avengers Infinity War, and of course Endgame. And this was their first, believe it or not, this was their first summer blockbuster kind of film. They're usually known for their TV work in terms of they did episodes for Community. They did a lot of stuff for, what's that other show with Jason Bateman, Arrested Development. And so it's incredible. I think they directed that movie Yumi and Dupree. So these are directors who have done comedies, directors who have done these very real, just comedies. Good comedies. Community and Arrested Development are great shows. Highly recommended. But these are TV directors who have done comedy, and they ended up directing one of the best actions, espionage, thriller, psychologically relatable superhero films since The Dark Knight. That is incredible. These directors clearly had so much potential in them, and they were just in the meantime doing a lot of these comedies, and then Marvel saw what they could do and said, you know what, the fun fact is, if you watch Community, there's this great episode where they have a paintball fight, and the action sequence in the movie is hilarious, but really good action for a TV comedy. And apparently the Marvel producers saw that episode of the paintball fight for Community, and because Anthony and Joe Russo directed that episode and directed the action and the comedy, and they loved that balance, they felt like they were the perfect directors to come on and do Winter Soldier. And this movie works. This movie isn't dark. The Dark Knight is a dark movie, but this movie isn't dark. This movie is Captain America. It's not supposed to be a dark or edgy movie. It's supposed to be hopeful, sincere. And I applaud them for doing that. Especially at an age in Hollywood, at a time where Hollywood feels like these movies have to be dark. These movies have to be edgy. These movies have to fit into a modern world. They have to be, we have to make Captain America cool for a modern audience. This movie spat in all of that Hollywood washing and said, no, we know who Captain America is. We know why he's been loved all these years. We know why he's so relatable. We know why people love this character, and we're going to show the best of who Captain America is. We're not going to change Captain America for a modern audience. We know who he is, and we're going to share that character with the world, and we're going to embrace who he is. And they did that with this movie. They really showed why Captain America is the most sincere, is the most hopeful, the most heroic, because his sense of heroism doesn't just stem from fighting bad guys with a shield. It stems from learning to persevere in life despite the psychological setbacks that one goes through when given the circumstances that Captain America has gone through. And you see lots of that. This movie does a beautiful job blending that psychological trauma with good comedy and great action. So that's why I feel this movie is the best in the entire MCU, because it's the most grounded, it's the most relatable. You don't even need to be a superhero kind of guy, a superhero film fan to really enjoy this movie. This movie works on so many levels because there's a lot of scenes that feel like they come from out of an indie movie, or at least like a really good dramedy. Like a really good dramedy that blends drama and comedy. This film is like a really good dramedy, and there's a lot of scenes that feel grounded and realistic, with just characters talking to each other, but having conversations about things that you and I could relate to. And that's what makes this movie work, and what makes Captain America, in my opinion, the best character in the entire MCU and the most relatable. And yeah, I highly recommend you check this out. If you're not into any of the, if you're not even into Avengers, if you're not into any of this stuff, that's perfectly fine. Like, but I highly recommend you at least check this film out. I mean, I do believe that to some extent you will get something out of this film, and I think it will help you realize that not all superhero films are just summer blockbuster CGI action. Some of these movies have heart, and this is the perfect example of a superhero film that feels grounded, realistic, has great action, has genuinely good comedy, has suspense, has great moments of suspense, and it's just sincere. I mean, I'll bat out some of the best suspenseful film moments in this movie. There's a beautiful scene where Nick Fury is attacked by Shield, by his own Shield, like these Shield agents who are undercover as police officers, and we don't realize it. We just see police officers, but they suddenly come out of nowhere and they attack Nick Fury in his car, and it's a great suspenseful, unexpected. And then you see like he's still in his car and they're all trying to break into his car, and you see other police cars chasing him, and he's like, the car is automatic, so he's learning to give commands to the car to like reboot the system and get out of there and get me out of here. And then he's like, activate gun turrets, and then the car pulls out a gun turret from the middle of the two front seats and uses that to fire back at a certain point. And it's just like, this movie is phenomenal. It has great suspenseful moments. There's this other disturbing espionage spy thriller kind of scene where you see the Winter Soldier and you see him sitting with Robert Redford's character, Alexander Pierce, and you see them just sitting in a dark room and they're just drinking milk, and you see and then you see Alexander Pierce's housemaid just comes back in suddenly, just asking if he needed anything else, and then Pierce kills his housemate because she saw the Winter Soldier just sitting there, and it's like, it has to be very secret so no one can know he's a part of this. And it's very disturbing but realistic, and shows the spy thriller part of this. And it's beautiful how this film knows how to blend these tones of harsh espionage spy thriller action with genuine heart and comedy. And it works beautifully, and why I think these are some of the best directors in the industry. I feel these are some of the best directors in the industry right now. They're the kind of directors who give them whatever project they want. If they have ideas for some original projects, give them all the money. They deserve it. They've proven that they can take these big films, and then this is a smaller film obviously compared to those, but they can take even big films like Civil War and Infinity War and Endgame and just inject so much heart into them that it feels grounded and relatable. And that's why this is one of the best films in the entire MCU.